Chapter 2163, Kaiang Chi. July 24, 2021. Translator, Silavan and Pew Pew Laser Gun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dul Liger Keys. Inside the Flowing Time Temple, because the routes each person chose were different, the opportunities they encountered were also different. However, at that moment, no matter where they were, everyone inexplicably felt a terrifying sensation, as if a pair of powerful eyes was spying on them from the darkness. This caused everyone to feel a chill shoot up their spine. Fortunately, this sensation came and went quickly, disappearing in the blink of an eye, making everyone feel as if it was just their own imaginations. Inside the vast, dark hall, the strange beast was still observing its surroundings and commenting from time to time. Many of the elite cultivators had been cast aside by it as trash, but when it turned its gaze to the Flowing Time steps, it showed a rare look of surprise. What's with this little one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A mere First Order Deo Source Realm brat actually brought 5 Emperor artifacts with him? What kind of background does he have? This strange beast had been alive for tens of thousands of years and had seen many great storms, but at this moment, it still couldn't help feeling shocked by Yang Kai's heritage, because it discovered that Yang Kai alone had brought 5 Emperor artifacts with him. Even an average Emperor Realm Master wouldn't have so many Emperor artifacts. These 5 were the Annihilation Thunder Bead, Sealed World Bead, Insect Enslavement Bracelet, Soul-Splitting Saber, and Myriad's Sword. In this Flowing Time Temple, nothing could escape this strange beast's perception. Is he also a descendant of a great emperor? The strange beast secretly guessed. What other explanation could there be? Or had emperor artifacts suddenly become far more abundant? Even someone as noble in status as Lan Xun only had 1 emperor artifact on her, and that was a defensive emperor artifact given to her by Bright Moon Great Emperor to prevent her from encountering any accidents. Forget it, although his aptitude and temperament are amongst the best, he smells like trouble, it would be best not to have any contact with him. The strange beast babbled for a while before turning away from Yang Kai and focusing on Zhang Ruoxi. Hey? This little girl, how could she only be a second-order origin returning realm? A suspicious light flashed across this beast's eyes as he muttered, how could she get here with such a low cultivation? After this Sir fell asleep, it seems many strange things have happened. Suddenly though, the beast's eyes went wide as he stared fixedly at Zhang Ruoxi and exclaimed, no, this little girl, she couldn't be. At that moment, it seemed as if the beast had discovered something, its originally arrogant tone giving way to one filled with panic. Even its 2 giant eyes flashed with fright, as if it was terrified of Zhang Ruoxi. From its massive head, beads of cold sweat began to leak. Right then, Zhang Ruoxi seemed to have reached her limit. The top of the Flowing Time steps was not far ahead of her, but she was unable to lift her feet anymore. Stubbornly staring up, she tried to continue on, but the feeling of exhaustion was so great that she simply couldn't move her legs. The Flowing Time force flooded out of the Flowing Time steps suddenly and began invading Zhang Ruoxi's body, trying to swallow her vitality. Behind her, Yang Kai, who had been chasing after Zhang Ruoxi, was still more than a dozen steps away when he clearly saw her glossy black hair rapidly turn grey. Yang Kai was shocked and realized something was wrong. Pushing his source chi violently, he strove forward, desperate to shorten the distance between them. But on these Flowing Time steps, each step up was extremely difficult, and this short distance of a dozen or so steps was not a distance Yang Kai could cross with just willpower alone. Immediately, Yang Kai became as anxious as an ant in a hot wok. The strange beast in the dark hall, however, was even more anxious than Yang Kai. As the guardian of the Flowing Time Temple, the change in Zhang Ruoxi's status was naturally seen by it. At first, it felt a burst of joy, thinking that Zhang Ruoxi was bound to die, but after a moment of happiness, it realized how dire the situation truly was, because once Zhang Ruoxi was driven to a dead end, her slumbering bloodline would surely manifest, and once it did, it would be a disaster for it. Thinking so, the strange beast stood up, stretched out a giant paw and shattered the space in front of it. Crossing space, the massive paw reached out and grabbed Zhang Ruoxi before immediately withdrawing. As it did this, it muttered to itself, "Oh cruel fate! I hope this is the right choice." As soon as these words fell, it slowly opened its paws and placed the now blank-faced Zhang Ruoxi in front of itself. Zhang Ruoxi obviously had no awareness of what just happened. A moment ago, she had felt like time was flashing before her eyes, as if several hundred years had gone by, causing her vitality to rapidly drain and death to approach. She wanted to turn back and call out to Yang Kai, but she couldn't even move her body. And just when she thought that death was inescapable, a giant claw actually fell from the sky, pulled her back from the gates of death, and brought her to this dark hall. Looking up, she saw a giant burning monster beast in front of her, staring at her with a pair of giant eyes. When an ordinary person saw such a behemoth, they would instinctively feel frightened, possibly even screaming in terror as they turned to flee. Zhang Ruoxi didn't think she was a particularly brave person. Her cultivation wasn't high and her knowledge wasn't very broad, so it wouldn't have been a surprise even if she had fainted directly from terror. But for some unknown reason, when her eyes met with those of this monster beast, she didn't feel the slightest fear. On the contrary, she felt as if this beast was the one who should be afraid of her. This feeling was baseless and extremely absurd, but it seemed to come from the very depths of her soul. It felt as natural as breathing, which made it all the more unbelievable. Pressing her red lips together, she continued to stare up at the huge monster beast, her tiny figure forming a sharp contrast with it. When the four eyes met, it was the giant monster beast's heart that clenched tightly as fear and panic consumed its thoughts. "You! Why do you seem afraid of me?" Zhang Ruoxi suddenly asked. As soon as she spoke, the giant monster beast couldn't help stepping back 2 steps and staring at her in fear, a muffled voice then leaking from his wryly upturned maw, "Hee." "Yes, why should I be afraid of you?" Zhang Ruoxi did not try to get to the bottom of this question and instead just beckoned to the beast. Seeing this, the monster beast actually obeyed, walking over to Zhang Ruoxi and lowering its head down, its violent eyes becoming extremely docile at this moment, some faint fear and panic still apparent in its gaze. "Did you save me?" Zhang Ruoxi asked. The monster beast thought for a moment before nodding, "Yes. Thank you." Zhang Ruoxi smiled sweetly and stretched out her hand, as if she wanted to pet the monster beast's head, but she hesitated for a while before asking, "I won't hurt you, will I?" She didn't know why she would ask such a question, but something in her instincts was telling her that if she touched the monster beast in front of her, it would very likely cause some harm. "The current you, probably won't," the monster beast replied. Zhang Ruoxi put her hand onto its forehead and touched it lightly. The scorching flames burned around Zhang Ruoxi's bare hands, but did not cause her any harm for some reason. As for the monster beast itself, it made a purring noise, like a cat would when it was pet by its owner. So embarrassing, how could this sir allow a little girl to touch him like this, simply shameful. The monster beast thought to itself uncomfortably, unable to stop his body from responding honestly. "What's your name?" Zhang Ruoxi suddenly asked again. "I am Qiang Qi." "What a strange name." Zhang Ruoxi smiled lightly, some confusion flashing across her beautiful eyes as she said, "I don't know why, but although I'm sure this is the first time I've heard this name, it sounds familiar to me. Do you know why?" "I don't." Qiang Qi shook his head like a rattle, thinking to himself that it would be best if she never understood for the rest of her life. How could this sir take the initiative to explain? If he did, this sir's end would be that much closer. Okay. Zhang Ruoxi withdrew her hand as she nodded before sincerely saying, "Thank you for saving my life just now, but can you please send me back now? I suddenly disappeared, so sir will be very worried." Sir. Kaiang Chi heard this and asked suspiciously, do you mean the young man who was following you? Can you see him? Zhang Ruoxi nodded quickly. Kaiang Chi proudly said, in this temple, nothing can escape this S. My observation. I saw you in trouble just now, which was why I brought you here. After a pause, Kaiang Chi shook his head again and said, unexpectedly, even someone as powerful as you must receive protection from others. Although he deliberately lowered the volume of his voice, his words were still heard by Zhang Ruoxi clearly. Zhang Ruoxi hurriedly waved her hands and said in an apologetic tone, what are you talking about? Sir is amazing, how could I possibly be as strong as Sir? She only thought Kaiang Chi was talking nonsense to appease her. One day, you will be strong, Kaiang Chi declared solemnly. Ruoxi will work hard, Zhang Ruoxi said, full of enthusiasm. Good, you and I meeting today can be considered a kind of fate, so I will give you a gift. Kaiang Chi suddenly thought of something and stretched out his paw again, grasping towards the void. When he took back his hand, an exquisite thin pink dress that exuded a potent emperor aura appeared in his palm. Your strength is still quite low right now, so this pink cloud's phoenix robe will be of great use to you. As long as you wear it, ordinary people won't be able to harm you. Kaiang Chi was extremely powerful, so the ordinary people he was referring to were likely cultivators below the emperor realm. How could I possibly accept such a gift? Although Zhang Ruoxi was quite taken with this beautiful dress, her humble upbringing and good education made it difficult for her to receive something so precious, so she quickly waved her hands and tried to refuse. Don't have any qualms about wearing this is your opportunity. On a cultivator's journey, opportunities are part of their strength. Kaiang Chi said aloud while in his heart he was thinking quite differently. If this Sir wasn't afraid some blind fool would try to hurt you and cause your bloodline to awaken in advance, how could he do something so meddlesome? This Sir had best take some precautions and make some plans in advance. When this Sir gets out of here, he should go to Dragon Island to find those old lizards and blackmail them with this knowledge. In any case, this Sir isn't alone in this problem, those old lizards won't be able to just sit back and ignore this. Chapter 2164, Fight. July 24, 2021. Translator, Silavan and Pew Pew Laser Gun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dul Liger Keys. At the flowing time steps, Yang Kai anxiously tried to climb upwards. Zhang Ruoxi suddenly disappearing in front of him had left him at a loss, not knowing what kind of danger this little girl was facing or whether something tragic had befallen her. Yang Kai was secretly blaming himself, feeling that if it wasn't for his whim of wanting Zhang Ruoxi to climb the flowing time steps, she would not have encountered such peril. Just as his anxiety was boiling over though, a flash of light occurred and a figure appeared. Yang Kai was startled, looked up, and was stunned by what he saw. Zhang Ruoxi was now standing atop the flowing time steps, looking down at him with a smile, her hair which should have turned white now returned to its original glossy black. An illusion. Yang Kai was a little dazed. He clearly saw Zhang Ruoxi disappear strangely just as the flowing time force was eroding her body and causing her to age rapidly, but now she had reappeared before him, safe and sound, like nothing had happened. Everything seemed too surreal. Yang Kai quickened his pace once more and after a stick of incense worth of time, he pantingly reached the top of the stairs. As soon as he reached the top, the flowing time force lingering around his body disappeared. Looking back, the flowing time steps had now become completely ordinary, seemingly lacking any semblance of mystical power. What happened just now? Yang Kai took a breath and asked quickly. Ruoxi was reckless, Zhang Ruoxi replied in a low voice that was filled with guilt. Ruoxi was immersed in the joy of gaining strength just now and completely forgot Sir's instructions. By the time Ruoxi reacted, it was too late. Then how did you? It was a powerful monster beast who saved me, Zhang Ruoxi replied timidly, carefully choosing her words, worried Yang Kai would become angry with her. A powerful monster beast. Yang Kai was stunned. Is there a monster beast in this flowing time temple? What kind of monster beast? At this moment, Yang Kai was thoroughly shocked. The flowing time temple had not appeared for tens of thousands of years. Even this time, its appearance was something of a strange coincidence. Yang Kai was certain nothing was alive inside this place, but now, according to Zhang Ruoxi, there was actually a powerful monster beast here, one strong enough to instantly rescue her from the flowing time steps. Such a powerful entity was enough to arouse Yang Kai's wariness. I can't say for certain, Zhang Ruoxi thought about it for a while, but didn't know how to describe what she experienced, soon just smiling and saying, however, he said he was called Kaiang Qi. What? Yang Kai's eyes bulged as cold sweat gathered on his forehead, gulping hard as he parroted, Kaiang Qi. That's what he called himself, Zhang Ruoxi nodded and replied. After she finished speaking, she tilted her head and asked, Sir, what's wrong? Why is your complexion so pale? Are you uncomfortable somewhere? You're sweating a lot. As she spoke, she took out a silk handkerchief, stood on her tiptoes, and gently wiped Yang Kai's forehead. Ahaha, the corners of Yang Kai's mouth twitched as he really didn't know what to say. Sir, are you okay? Zhang Ruoxi asked softly. Okay. I'm okay, Yang Kai replied subconsciously before turning to stare at Zhang Ruoxi and ask, Are you sure he said he was called Kaiang Qi? That's what he said. Did he do anything bad to you? Zhang Ruoxi shook her head blankly, no. After saying so though, she smiled joyfully and added, he did give me something though. What? Zhang Ruoxi smiled and began condensing her Saint Qi, soon causing a burst of light that could dazzle one's eyes to radiate from her body. Yang Kai squinted his eyes to get a better look, only to have his heart shake violently the next moment. On Zhang Ruoxi, he now saw a tight-fitting pink garment, one that was both lithe and beautiful. Its appearance was only secondary though, as what truly mattered was the rich emperor aura that pulsed from it. An emperor artifact. It's actually a defensive emperor artifact. What's going on here? Zhang Ruoxi had suddenly disappeared from the flowing time steps, and after she came back, she said she had met a monster beast named Kaiang Qi. Not only did that monster beast save her and treat her well, it even gifted her a defensive emperor artifact. Yang Kai was at a complete loss. After Zhang Ruoxi activated this defensive artifact, the emperor artifact shone brilliantly, highlighting her budding beauty. Timidly, she asked Yang Kai, is it pretty? Yang Kai gave a dry smile and said, very pretty. This is an emperor artifact. How could it be described simply as pretty? Yang Kai screamed wildly in his heart. Although he had 5 emperor artifacts on hand, none of them were of a defensive type, which showed just how rare such emperor artifacts were. Kaiang Qi said it's called the Pink Cloud's Phoenix Robe. Zhang Ruoxi explained, I don't like pink, but since Sir said it looks pretty. It seems he gave you this with kind intentions, Yang Kai tried to calm himself down. Next time you meet him, be sure to thank him properly. Ruoxi will remember, Zhang Ruoxi nodded respectfully. Put it away for now, and don't expose it unless you have no other option, otherwise it will likely draw unwanted trouble. Yes. Zhang Ruoxi nodded while moving her divine sense to take back the Pink Cloud's Phoenix Robe. By the way, Ruoxi, did that Kaiang Qi say anything else to you? Yang Kai asked cautiously. Zhang Ruoxi thought for a while before saying, he said to tell Sir that if he has a chance to enter the final room, Sir must choose the thing which seems the most useless. Choose the thing that seems the most useless. Yang Kai frowned, puzzled, what does that mean? Zhang Ruoxi shook her head, I don't know, he sent me back after saying it. After getting along for so long, Yang Kai also understood how pure this little girl's personality was and knew she couldn't be hiding something from him. It was even more impossible for her to try to deceive him, so Yang Kai changed the subject to inquiring about the Qiangqi she met, but he did not obtain much information. This matter shocked Yang Kai greatly, and in the end, he could only chalk it up to Zhang Ruoxi gaining a random opportunity. If that wasn't the case, how could a mere second-order origin returning realm cultivator like her return safe and sound after meeting an ominous beast like a Qiangqi? What's more, she returned with a gift like the pink cloud's phoenix robe. Afterwards, Yang Kai let Zhang Ruoxi return to the sealed world bead before he sat alone at the top of flowing time steps, calming his mind a little. After a long silence, he got up again. At the top of flowing time steps, there was a single door. Yang Kai had noticed it before and understood that if he wanted to leave this place, this was likely the only way. Reaching out, Yang Kai slowly pushed the door open. A dazzling light came from ahead, causing Yang Kai to squint his eyes. Only after releasing his divine sense to probe inside and confirm there was no danger did Yang Kai step through. A feeling of weightlessness came immediately, as if crossing a single step had transported him to a different space. A living aura suddenly appeared nearby, one Yang Kai was vaguely familiar with, and one that was emitting a strong hostility. Yang Kai was startled, raised his eyes to look forward, and after seeing the situation ahead, he couldn't help being startled. The place where he now stood was a raised circular platform that was roughly 1,000 meters in diameter. Around this stage was a dark abyss that one could hear faint howls coming from. It was a disturbing image, like staring into an endless purgatory from which there was no return. However, when Yang Kai swept his eyes around, he found that the door he had just stepped through was nowhere to be seen. On this high platform, one person stood holding a sword, waiting quietly. When Yang Kai appeared, the eyes of this individual flashed like a hawk, fixing on him as they blazed with fighting spirit. Four eyes soon met and both individuals were taken aback. Yang Kai grinned and raised his hand to wave at this man. "Brother Xiaobai, you're here too, what a coincidence." He discovered that the person on this high platform was none other than Xiaobai Yi from the Azure Sun Temple. However, Yang Kai didn't see Murong Xiao Xiao, who had been traveling together with Xiaobai Yi this whole time. As he called out, Yang Kai walked over towards Xiaobai Yi while examining his surrounding environment, but what made him puzzled was that the stage seemed to be an isolated space with no way out. Yang Kai frowned slightly, not knowing what mysteries were hidden here, but as he was lost in thought, he heard a buzzing sound from up ahead and a flash of light flew towards him at the same time. Yang Kai paused in place, causing the blade of light to cut a line right in front of his foot, nearly hitting him. Yang Kai looked up at Xiaobai Yi, frowned, and asked, "Brother Xiaobai, what are your intentions?" "To fight." Xiaobai Yi's long sword flicked and pointed at Yang Kai from far away, a fierce fighting spirit boiling out from his body. Yang Kai's brow twitched as he said, "There's no need for that now, if you want to fight, just wait until we leave the Four Seasons realm. Fighting here with you, it's not right." Xiaobai Yi slowly shook his head, his expression as cold as ice as he quickly said, "It is precisely because we are here that we must fight." Yang Kai heard this, seemed to think of something, and immediately became gloomy as he asked, "What Brother Xiaobai means, is that only one of us can leave here?" Xiaobai Yi nodded, "It seems that you're not stupid." He shouted loudly, "This is a type of trial. Only the winner here will be qualified to move on." As he spoke, Yang Kai noticed that above this high platform, 3 large characters were condensed from pure energy, floating gently in the air, that read "One Path Stage." In an instant, he understood. Xiaobai Yi waiting here, was probably because he was waiting for an opponent. And now it just so happened that his opponent was Yang Kai. Thinking so, Yang Kai wore a serious expression and said solemnly, "It looks like, we really must fight. Yet, the winner advances, while the loser, what do you think?" Yang Kai asked. Xiao Baiyi shook his head, I don't know, normally the loser dies. After saying so, he coldly snorted and said, Why, are you scared? Yang Kai smiled bitterly and shook his head, No, it's just that. I don't want to kill you, brother Xiao Bai. You and I have no grievances, and although you seem to have a bad opinion of me, at any rate, we entered the Four Seasons realm together, so if I were to really kill you here, how could I explain it to Elder Gao and the others? Chapter 2165, My name is Xiao Bai Yi. July 24, 2021. Translator, Silavan and Pew Pew Laser Gun. Editor and proofreader, Leo of Zion Mountain and Dul Liger Keys. You, kill me. Xiao Bai Yi sneered fiercely, shameless boasting. Brother Xiao Bai, Yang Kai spoke earnestly and eloquently, I believe it best to calm down and carefully search for another way out of this damned place. No need, before you came, I searched this place thoroughly. Between you and I, there can only be battle. Before Yang Kai could finish speaking, Xiao Bai Yi interrupted him coldly, to be honest, with your strength, being able to defeat Shui Yi and snatch his spot was already quite surprising. You do have the qualifications to enter the Four Seasons realm. But this Xiao is a disciple of Azure Sun Temple, and Shui Yi's senior brother, so I cannot stand back and watch him be bullied. Junior brother Shui's grievance from that day will be avenged today by this Xiao. However, you may rest assured, given the difference in cultivation between you and I, this Xiao will not use his full strength. 60% will be enough, and, if possible, I won't kill you. As soon as these words fell, Xiao Bai Yi slashed his sword towards Yang Kai's head, sending out a dazzling blast of ice attribute sword chi. Yang Kai grinned in response and said, Since this battle is inevitable, I ask brother Xiao Bai to not take offense for what happens next. Saying so, the place where Yang Kai stood was covered in sword light and his body was pierced through, but oddly, no blood flowed out and the faint smile on his lips remained. Xiao Bai Yi's expression changed drastically as he pushed his source chi madly, creating a swirling snowstorm around himself while quickly lifting up his sword and condensing a giant sword light onto it, which he slashed out violently. In the direction he slashed, Yang Kai's figure appeared strangely, but instantly disappeared once more. Hong! The giant sword wave stirred up the surrounding aura as Xiao Bai Yi stood in place, his eyes darting around, tracing Yang Kai's flickering figure. As I thought, you're a little strange, it was no fluke that you beat Shui Yi. Xiao Bai Yi quickly said. Yang Kai smiled slightly, Brother Xiao Bai, was that 60% of your power just now? If so, I advise you to use your full strength as soon as possible, otherwise. Don't worry, that was only 30% just now. Xiao Bai Yi said proudly. 30%, Yang Kai murmured before nodding lightly and saying with some admiration, as expected of an elite from Azure Sun Temple, you're vastly different from the Dao Source Realm cultivators I've faced before. It's not too late to admit defeat now. Xiao Bai Yi exhaled lightly as he lifted his sword once more, gathering sword light onto its blade before stabbing it out towards Yang Kai's chest. This thrust was fast, accurate, and ruthless, inspiring ice principles around it as it flew forward, causing a thin layer of frost to cover the stage. At the same time, any icy chill filled the air, once that caused all within its range to shiver slightly. Ice principles. Yang Kai commented as he felt these principles began to affect his movements. The space around him became solidified, forcing him to release his 5 elements indestructible sword chi to restore his freedom while also summoning the myriad sword into his hands. With a wave of this broadsword, Yang Kai shouted, Myriad sword arts, one man is a mountain. 1,000 blades of sword chi fell from the sky like a waterfall, blocking Xiao Bai Yi's incoming attack. That emperor artifact again. Amidst the clash of sword lights, Xiao Bai Yi coldly snorted as he did not try to dodge the incoming wave and instead pushed his own sword chi harder, attempting to smash through this curtain-like defense. Chi 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 chi. The wall of sword light from the myriad sword was pierced through, leaving Yang Kai exposed. Who? Xiao Baiyi's figure reappeared suddenly, his eyes flashing a sharp light as an astonishing aura burst from his body, and he swung his sword towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai grinned fiercely and moved his own sword to parry this blow. With a clang, a fierce shockwave burst out and the space above the battle stage collapsed as tiny blades of sword chi splashed out and disappeared in a flash. Xiao Baiyi's figure froze up for a moment, but he quickly escaped from the suppression of the Emperor artifact, leaving behind an afterimage as he swiftly cut towards Yang Kai's from a dead angle. Even now, he had the spare capacity to shout, although an Emperor artifact is strong, just how much of its power can you exert with your cultivation? Shui Yi's defeat at your hands was due to his own carelessness. Yang Kai responded like a fierce dragon, wielding his myriads to block all assaults as he smiled and said, Brother Xiao Bai seems to have a lot of opinions about this sword. Even as the two talked, their movements did not slow down, the clashing of metal adding a kind of grating music to their conversation. Humph, is relying on the power of an artifact something impressive? If that's what you think, I can change swords. As soon as Yang Kai's voice fell, the myriad sword in his hand suddenly disappeared and was replaced by a Dao Source grade mid-rank sword. Xiao Baiyi frowned as he withdrew from the engagement, speaking in a cold tone, changing your weapon mid-battle, what are you trying to say? It's nothing really, Yang Kai tilted his head and looked at him. I just don't want you to complain after I win that you only lost because I used my Emperor artifact. Are you looking down on me? Xiao Baiyi was so angered that his white robes began fluttering despite there being no wind. Slowly rising up into the air, he spat coldly, if you change back now, I will pretend I never say anything, if not, it will be too late to regret it. As he spoke, he pointed his sword towards the sky. Suddenly, a swirling blizzard appeared, one that rapidly grew in intensity as it released heaven-destroying energy into the surrounding, overlapping with Xiao Baiyi's explosive momentum. A cold, indifferent voice called out from inside the blizzard as Xiao Baiyi shouted, "This is 60% of my strength. If you can't block it, you'll die. I advise you to withdraw." Having delivered his warning, he shouted, "Mortal sword, swirling destruction." The vortex blizzard suddenly condensed into a swirling ice dragon that flew out with unstoppable force towards where Yang Kai stood. Yang Kai finally straightened his carefree expression upon facing this technique. Feeling the power contained in this killing move, he couldn't help commenting, as expected of Azure Sun Temple's second strongest disciple, Brother Xiao Bai lives up to his name. If this is just 60% of your strength, Brother Xiao Bai's full strength must be even more astonishing. Although he was offering praise, Yang Kai's hands did not remain idle. Lifting his sword, Yang Kai's expression became solemn as he murmured, 3,000 sword Dao, flowing flames raging fire. Instantly, Yang Kai's sword turned crimson red, and as he thrust it out, a giant firebird manifested from it, its figure identical to Lu Yan's firebird form. With a piercing cry, the firebird and ice dragon met head-on. Hong hong hong. The ice dragon evaporated while the firebird was annihilated. Xiao Baiyi was forced back a few steps as he uttered a low voice, "How is that possible?" Staring at Yang Kai in a state of shock, he asked in a solemn tone, "What is the relationship between you and Senior Chen Wenhao of Heavenly Martial Holy Land?" As an elite disciple of Azure Sun Temple, Xiao Baiyi naturally knew about Chen Wenhao. The 3,000 sword Dao was a sword art that Chen Wenhao had spent his lifetime comprehending, but now it was being displayed by Yang Kai. Although the technique Yang Kai executed seemed slightly different, it was still incredibly powerful. None really. Yang Kai flicked the sword in his hand and replied casually, "I just fought him once, and after witnessing his 3,000 sword Dao, I thought it was a pretty good technique, so I tried using it." Yang Kai was telling the truth. When he was being corrupted by the demon spirit that day, he had really fought Chen Wenhao. In fact, not only did he fight Chen Wenhao, he also fought Gao Shueting and Feng Ming. Each of those three emperors had executed their finest techniques, so they were naturally still fresh in Yang Kai's mind, allowing him to gain some slight comprehension of them. However, the 3000 sword Dao Yang Kai displayed at this moment took a completely different form from Chen Wenhao's due to their different comprehensions. In order to display this technique, Yang Kai had used his fire sword qi from his 5 elements indestructible sword qi and Lu Yan's form as a basis, while the 3000 sword Dao only served as a type of reference to execute the technique. How could it be that easy to understand an Emperor Realm Master's sword art? Only another emperor could be able to slowly comprehend and display this sword art's complete prestige. However, this was more than enough to deal with the current situation. Xiao Baiyi had only heard about the 3000 sword Dao and had never witnessed it personally, so how could he judge whether Yang Kai's technique was real or not? Enough! Xiao Baiyi yelled, enraged, there should be a limit to shamelessness. Spouting such nonsense, who do you think will believe you? No matter what relationship you have with Senior Chen, nothing can save you today. His aura suddenly climbed, seemingly feeling that 60% of his strength wasn't enough to win against Yang Kai. Xiao Baiyi was now determined to use his full strength. Chi chi chi! Flashes of lightning suddenly emerged from Xiao Baiyi's body, and soon the battle stage was transformed into a terrifying storm of thunder and lightning. Even after comprehending ice principles, you can also use a thunder attribute secret technique. Yang Kai was extremely surprised. Brother Xiao Bai is really quite extraordinary. In time, you will certainly be an overlord in the star boundary. Flattery is useless. Xiao Bai! Xiao Bai, happily shouting that damned name over and over again. Earth sword, falling thunder. Lightning gathered at the tip of Xiao Baiyi's sword from all around before he slashed down and unleashed a torrent of violent arcs that submerged the place where Yang Kai stood. The power of this falling thunder was both sharp and violent, seemingly completely sealing off the surrounding space, leaving no path of escape. Yang Kai's heart moved as he shouted loudly, so that's how it is. It's all because being called Brother Xiao Bai makes you feel so uncomfortable. As soon as these words fell, Yang Kai was wrapped up in a sea of lightning and a burnt smell soon filled the air. Xiao Baiyi blinked as he stared down from above, frowning as he declared, "Remember, my name is Xiao Baiyi. I just thought, calling you Brother Xiao Bai would be more cordial. Brother Xiao doesn't need to be so angry, right?" Yang Kai's voice leisurely responded from below, as if he wasn't experiencing the slightest hardship. Xiao Baiyi's eyes bulged as he gawked at the sight below him. Inside the sea of lightning, Yang Kai's whole figure seemed to have undergone a tremendous change. On the surface of his body, a 5-colored radiance that carried with it an aura of all 5 primary elements had appeared and was resisting the swirling lightning. At the same time, both his hands were now covered in a layer of golden scales, making them more closely resemble dragon claws. Even on the exposed parts of Yang Kai's skin, golden scales which exuded an intimidating aura had appeared.